All right, so keeping on with moral nihilism, and again, kind of running with Kanye a little bit. There's certain parts of truth that so many of us are afraid of. The title of one of Kanye's albums, My Beautiful, Dark, Twisted Fantasy, really sums it all up very nicely. Right? It's his, right? There's that arrogance and self-promotion and selfishness. I own this. These are mine. Right? Not anybody else's, mine, because I'm great. I see things other people don't see. I can interpret things in a different way than other people interpret them. For example, dark and twisted is how everyone else may view them. I, however, see them as beautiful. My dark, twisted, beautiful. Or my beautiful, dark, twisted fantasy. Sorry, my beautiful. I see it as beautiful. The rest of you will see it as dark and twisted. Fantasy. The stuff that I can imagine, the stuff that I can see that you all can't. Because you're losers. And I, Kanye West, am a winner. Even more subversive than Kanye. I'm getting ready to ruin some people's childhoods here, probably. I'm going to quote lyrics from another song, which you would not necessarily think indicates something about moral nihilism. But it does. Remember the tenets of moral nihilism, right? This notion of right and wrong, good and evil. It's literally for losers, right? This notion of God, heaven, hell, literally for losers. What we've got is freedom, we've got power to succeed, to win, to be great, to leave a legacy, to be an artist, to be a genius. The snow glows white on the mountain tonight, not a footprint to be seen. A kingdom of isolation, it looks like I'm the queen. Notice, a couple of things already in these first couple of lines. A kingdom of isolation. That's what it's going to look like to everyone else is isolation. What it truly is independence. That's different. Freedom and independence. Dependency is lack of freedom. Looks like connection and community and all that other stuff that these loser sheep like. Flocks and safety. Independent, few, strong, proud. To the loser will seem like isolating. But it's not. It looks like I'm the queen. Right? So even if you do want to look at it as a kingdom of isolation, you know what? In this kingdom, I'm queen. I'm the most powerful. I'm the greatest in this kingdom. The wind is howling like the swirling storm inside. Couldn't keep it in. Right? These drives, these compulsions, these impulses, I can't keep them in. Heaven knows I've tried. An intentional allusion to the notions of heaven and hell. Heaven knows that I've tried, but I can't. Don't let them in. Don't let them see. Be the good girl you always have to be. Good girl based upon these traditional notions of value and ethics and morality and all of that. That we're ditching, we're leaving this behind. That's what she's leaving behind as she's leaving Arendelle. She's leaving behind all that stuff, all that garbage that was inhibiting her power. She was afraid that people were going to see who she truly was. When they did, they were the ones that were afraid. So who's got the real power here? Conceal, don't feel, don't let them know. Why can you not let them know? Because they'll be afraid. It's as if their spine will have been snapped. Their self-confidence wrecked. Now they know. Now they know. Let it go, let it go. Can't hold it back anymore. Let it go, turn away, slam the door on that past, on that old stuff. I'm not trying to be the good girl. I'm trying to do what heaven thinks I should do. Forget all that. And don't forget what she's doing as she's singing this song. She's creating an awesome ice castle. She's an artist. She's creating. Let it go, let it go. care what they're going to say anymore. I once did, I no longer do. Because I can't allow the loser sheep to determine who I am and what I do. Let the storm rage on. The cold never bothered me anyway. I'm fine. I don't need their approval. I'm all good here. I'll keep playing piano, thank you very much, and prove you jokers wrong. It's funny how some distance makes everything seem small. This has to do with perspective. Now, in the movie, obviously, this is about visual perspective, right? This is about, Arundel's off in the distance. It looks pretty small and insignificant now because I'm up here on my ice castle or whatever. But it also has to do with the perspective of history, right? In the huge view of history, the winner may have a few missteps, a few individual losses along the way. But that all gets lost and absorbed in the overall picture of the winning, of the greatness. It's about perspective. Individual things here and there kind of get wiped away. We're looking at the holistic picture instead. The fears that once controlled me, she's admitting. Fear used to control me till I realized that I'm a winner, I'm powerful, forget those fears. I can't live in fear anymore. That's loser stuff. The fears that once controlled me can't get to me at all. It's time to see what I can do, to test the limits and break through. And you think Shrapi's a nut job, probably. Well, why are you quoting Let It Go when we're supposed to be talking about ethics? Here's why. The very next line. She's telling you this pertains to ethics too. No right, no wrong, no rules for me. I'm free. That's exactly what nihilism's talking about. We're moving beyond the distinction between good and evil, right and wrong, all that nonsense. All that stuff that potentially holds winners back. You losers, you want to keep living with rules and right and wrong? Sweet. Have at it. Just don't try to drag the winners down into that too. Let winners be winners. Let winners succeed. Let it go, let it go. I'm one with the wind and sky. Nietzsche talks about the shaman who becomes one with all of nature and so forth. When we're inebriated, when we're intoxicated, we kind of go to a different level, a different plane of existence, right? Such that it doesn't matter who has PhDs and who doesn't. We're all just kind of the same. And Nietzsche makes it very clear we're also reunited with nature itself. She's being reunited with nature itself. She's one with the wind and the sky. You'll never see her cry, here I stand, here I stay, let the storm rage on. My power flurries through the air into the ground. My soul is spiraling in frozen fractals all around. Everything that I am, this isn't just stuff that I'm creating, this is an extension of me. This is who I am. I am this ice castle. I am the ice queen. I am cold. I am isolated. I am an artist, and you can just deal with it. It's what makes the juxtaposition between her and Anna so striking. Anna craves personal interaction. Anna needs other people, so much so that she literally falls in love with the first guy she sees and runs into. Which then is what gets this whole thing started. Elsa's like, are you crazy? Like this is ridiculous. This is ludicrous. You don't need somebody else so badly that you just rush into a relationship. You just met this person. Who do you think you are, Juliet? And one thought crystallizes like an icy blast. I'm never going back. The past is in the past. Winners can't dwell on the past. Winners may be focused on past greatness so that they can learn from it and succeed beyond it. But their obsession is with the future, not the past. Their obsession is with what's next. How else can I succeed? Not how have I failed. That's loser stuff. Losers are the ones who fall into depression. Oh man, I messed this one up again. I messed this up. And oh, what if? You're like, there's no time for that. No time for that. Short-term memories. Got to move on. What's next? Succeed, succeed, succeed. Winning, losing. Succeeding, failing. Breaking rules and laws and ethics. Following rules and laws and ethics. Success or happy. Because losers want to do the happy thing. Well, I'm a loser, but at least I'm happy. Notice again the at least. Right? Losers chase happy because they know they can't win at success. So they change the game. They change the rules. No, I know I'm unsuccessful. But I'm not chasing success. I don't want to be great. I'm content and happy. Or have you convinced yourself you're happy because you know you can't succeed? And so I wonder in this part of the discussion board, if I give you the option between one or the other, just success or happy, which one would you really prefer? To be unhappy yet successful, or to be happy yet unsuccessful? And if Nietzsche is right, which needs to be taken seriously, even if he is wrong, if Nietzsche is right, what then does that say about the state of your winning or losing? More seemingly odd things that do connect, I promise. This is from a newspaper article from a few years ago about bullying. Now, you would think bullying, well, the bullies are the big, strong, fast, so Nietzsche would probably be okay with bullying, right? Sort of. Nietzsche would be okay with bullying, but what he is even more in favor of is allowing the person to be bullied to figure out a way to stop being bullied. This is from, I'm quoting from the article here. When a child is being bullied, a parent's first thought might be to pick up the phone to call the aggressor's mom or dad. A parent might want to think twice, though, before making that call. And this is quoting Jim Basinius, a child and adolescent therapist. Unless your child's in second grade or younger, contacting the parent almost never works. In fact, generally get your kid picked on more and more under the radar than your child suffering alone. Instead, he says, parents should teach children how to nullify tormentors, and if need be then, enlist the help of school officials. Quoting again from Jim Basinius, empowering your kid, they'll use that until they're 90. People who bully get older, they don't go away. Right, so could you imagine, right, someone who runs to the boss every chance they get because they think they're being bullied? Now, I'm not talking about harassed, that's a different thing, but bullied, picked on. Oh, so-and-so said he didn't like my tie, make him stop. So-and-so said that he didn't like the car I drive, make him stop. So-and-so said I'm short, make him stop, boss. Come on. You need to figure out a way to deal with this on your own, man. And you may as well start as early as the second grade because bullies aren't going away, they just get older. And so the real value here is that we could really separate winners from losers. Winners are the ones who are going to find a smart, creative, artistic way to be empowered and to nullify the bullying. Now, I'm not talking about hurting the bully or something along those lines. I'm talking about something much more subversive and creative. I'm thinking about, it's an older movie now called Roxanne, starring Steve Martin. And in this movie, Roxanne, the Steve Martin character plays the fire chief of this small town, and he has a huge nose. It's a retelling of Cyrano de Bergerac. He has this huge nose. Everybody in town knows he has a huge nose, and nobody cares because he's a great fire chief and a great guy. But sometimes there'll be a traveler through town, some tourist or something coming through, and we'll find the guy with the big nose and make fun of him. This happens in one scene, it happens in a bar. And so the Steve Martin character with his big nose is sitting there. This out-of-towner says something stupid about his nose. It's not even funny. And the Steve Martin character then comments, look at that, that's the best you got? That's awful. Like, I wouldn't have even minded as much if it actually would have been funny, right? If I could at least, because I can laugh at the size of my own nose, I know it's big, so what? Right? But that wasn't even clever. That was lame. And so the Steve Martin character then proceeds to tell funnier insults about his own nose than the outsider did. That's limiting the power of the bully. That's emasculating him. Right? That's removing all of the power that the bully thinks he has by saying, no, I'm funnier and more creative than you. Smart, creative, always wins over a big, strong, fast. And then I think the other guy does actually like take a swing and Steve Martin beats him up or whatever. Because he's mad because he got outsmarted, outwitted, outclevered. Right? I'm not on these social media things, but that's my impression about Twitter, right? Twitter is, hey, let's be snarky, let's be funnier, let's be smarter than the other guy or something along those lines. Let's be wittier. Social Darwinism for social media. Something else to consider. So with the survival of the fittest thing, there is this connection with, again, rewarding success. And many folks will claim that that's the thing that makes the United States itself successful, is the fact that we reward success. If you're the greatest in the world at anything other than soccer, extremely high probability you'll come here to do it. Because here you can be rewarded financially for being great, or with prestige, or both. The United States rewards winners. Which is why then Ann Coulter, right-wing political pundit talking head type person, wrote this article. And this is from 2014, so it's old based on what she's talking about. But the sentiment still holds. And it's about soccer. This was a very famous / infamous article at the time, many responses to it and so forth. But it seems to me, at least, that there's a lot of Nietzschean undertones here to what she's writing about. And quite frankly, that's not at all surprising. The Republican Party's economic platform, at least, is somewhat based on social Darwinism, right? That the strong survive, the smart survive, let's reward the successful people, then that'll trickle down to the rest of us. Just like Prometheus, when he stole fire from the gods, who benefited the rest of us, even though we're the ones telling him don't do it, right? Rand's creators and parasites. The creators create stuff, and the parasites then use that stuff. Steve Jobs and all the other folks from Apple and Texas Instruments and all these early computer folks, we're basically parasitic on their ideas and their creations, right? They were crazy until it worked. James Bond villain, I forget which Bond movie because they're all kind of the same. Bond was telling him, you're crazy, right? You're insane. And he said, Mr. Bond, the line between brilliance and insanity is measured by success. It's crazy until it doesn't work, and then it was insightful and genius. This is Ann Coulter. And you may be offended by this. Okay, but this is in keeping with what we're talking about with Nietzsche and moral nihilism, winning and losing. I've held off writing about soccer for a decade, about the length of the average soccer game, so as not to offend anyone. But enough is enough. Any growing interest in soccer can only be a sign of this nation's moral decay. So notice she's equating soccer and morality. Interest in soccer, moral decay. Moral decay eventually leads to nihilism. Sort of, though she's going to twist it. And I want you to notice the references that she's going to make and the basis for those references, keeping in mind, again, the stuff we talked about, or I talked about with regards to Nietzsche and moral nihilism. Firstly, this is back to Anne, individual achievement is not a big factor in soccer. For the nihilist, the following of the drives, the following of the compulsions, the greatness, the legacy leaving, the success of the individual, not of the collective. Soccer is all about the collective. In a real sport, back to Anne, players fumble passes, throw bricks, drop fly balls, all in front of a crowd. Well, under normal circumstances, right? When baseball players strike out, they're standing alone at the plate. But there's also individual glory in home runs, touchdowns, slam dunks. Side note, Wilt Chamberlain was so dominant for a time in basketball, just physically dominant. He averaged over 50 points per game. This is before the advent of the three-point line. He scored 100 points in one game, again, before the advent of the three-point line, and his free throw shooting was atrocious. He was a less than 50% free throw shooter throughout his entire career, and still dominated, to the point where they changed the rules of basketball to outlaw the slam dunk because it was a competitive advantage for someone who already had so many advantages. They passed rules to limit greatness. Anyway, in soccer, back to Anne, the blame is dispersed. Almost no one scores anyway. There are no heroes, no losers, no accountability, and no child's fragile self-esteem is bruised. There's a reason perpetually alarmed women are called soccer moms, not football moms. Do they even have MVPs in soccer? Everyone just runs up and down the field. Every once in a while, a ball accidentally goes in. That's when we're supposed to go wild. I'm already asleep. Number 2, liberal moms like soccer. So notice she's connecting some dots here between soccer loving and liberal thinking and ideology. Strong individuals and Republican Party or something along those lines. Liberal moms like soccer because it's a sport in which athletic talent finds so little expression that girls can play with boys. No serious sport is co-ed, even at the kindergarten level. Third, no other sport ends in as many scoreless ties as soccer. This was an actual marquee signed by the Freeway in Long Beach about a World Cup game last week. So remember, this is 2 World Cup cycles ago. This is 2014. Second period, 11 minutes left, score was 0-0. 2 hours later, another World Cup game was on the same screen. First period, 8 minutes left, score 0-0. If Michael Jackson had treated his chronic insomnia with a tape of Argentina versus Brazil instead of propofol, he'd still be alive, although bored. Even in football, by which I mean football, there are very few scoreless ties, and it's a lot harder to score when a half dozen 300-pound bruisers are trying to crush you. Another side note, the NFL and college football are constantly passing rules to avoid ties at all. Why? Because there's got to be a winner and there's got to be a loser. What happens in soccer? You can end in a tie, unless it's a knockout stage or something along those lines. Typically, it can end in a tie. And you know what happens if it ends in a tie? You get a point anyway. You get 3 points for winning, 0 points for losing, but you get a point for tying because at least you didn't lose. At least you didn't lose. The prospect of either personal humiliation or major injuries required to count as a sport. Most sports are sublimated warfare. As Lady Thatcher reportedly said after Germany had beaten England in some major soccer game, "Don't worry, after all, twice this century we beat them at their national game," which is to say war. Baseball and basketball present a constant threat of personal disgrace. In hockey, there are 3 or 4 fights a game. It's not a stroll on the beach to be on the ice with a puck flying around 100 miles an hour. After a football game, ambulances carry off the wounded. After a soccer game, every player gets a ribbon and a juice box. Another side note, I had a student a couple semesters ago look up the origin of the participation award, the participation ribbon. It was a child's soccer league in California. Number 5, you can't use your hands in soccer. What sets man apart from the lesser beasts is that we have opposable thumbs. Our hands can hold things. Here's a great idea. Let's create a game where you're not allowed to use them. Number 6, I resent the force-fed aspect of soccer. The same people trying to push soccer on Americans are the ones demanding that we love HBO's Girls. I guess that was a TV show back in the day. light rail, Beyonce, and Hillary Clinton. The number of New York Times articles claiming soccer's catching on is exceeded only by the ones pretending women's basketball is fascinating. I note, we don't have to be endlessly told how exciting football is. Number 7, it's foreign. In fact, that's the precise reason the Times is constantly hectoring Americans to love it. One group of sports fans with whom soccer is not catching on at all is African Americans. They remain distinctly unimpressed by the fact that the French like it. Number 8, soccer is like the metric system, which liberals also adore because it's European. Naturally, the metric system emerged from the French Revolution during the brief intervals when they weren't committing mass murder by guillotine. Despite being subjected to Chinese-style brainwashing in the public schools to use centimeters and Celsius, ask any American for the temperature, and he'll say something like 70 degrees. Ask how far Boston is from New York City, he'll say about 200 miles. Liberals get angry and tell us that the metric system is more rational than the measurements everyone understands. This is ridiculous. An inch, the width of a man's thumb. A foot, the length of his foot. A yard, the length of his belt. That's easy to visualize. How do you visualize 147.2 centimeters? Number 9, soccer is not catching on. Headlines this week, so remember this is like 6 years ago, proclaimed record U.S. ratings for the World Cup, and we had to hear again about the growing popularity of soccer in the U.S. The USA-Portugal game, which was the blockbuster match, garnered 18.2 million viewers on ESPN. This beat the second most watched soccer game ever, the 1999 Women's World Cup final. Run-of-the-mill, regular season Sunday night football games average more than 20 million viewers. NFL playoff games, 30 to 40 million viewers. This year's Super Bowl, so remember, quite a few Super Bowls ago now, 111.5 million viewers. Remember when the media tried to foist British soccer star David Beckham and his permanently camera-ready wife on us a few years ago? You all don't, because you're far too young. It was a thing, it totally happened. This also totally happened. Their arrival in America was heralded with 24/7 news coverage that lasted about 2 days. Ratings tanked. No one cared. And here's how Ann Coulter closes this article, railing against soccer. And really what she's doing is equating soccer loving to socialism. Right? Loving soccer is the slippery slope to socialism, which seems ridiculous. And maybe there's something to it. If more Americans are watching soccer today, it's only because of the demographic switch affected by Ted Kennedy's 1965 immigration law. I promise you, Ann says, no American whose great-grandfather was born here is watching soccer. One can only hope that in addition to learning English, these new Americans will drop their soccer fetish with time. That's Ann Coulter, it's not necessarily David Schrappe. Okay, it's Ann Coulter saying that. I'm going to give you a brief list of some of the United States cities that have professional soccer teams. And I want you to think, do they have anything else in common besides the fact that they have soccer teams? Portland, Seattle, Sacramento, San Jose, Los Angeles has 2, Austin, Texas, which the motto of Austin is keep Austin weird. Weird in contrast to the rest of Texas, because it's not really like a Texas city. Minneapolis. Where else? Oh, New York City has 2. Boston. Miami. Orlando, Florida. Atlanta. Where else? Columbus, Ohio. Canadian cities as well, of course. Toronto, Vancouver, Montreal. And that's just a list of some of them. But if we were to plot those on a political map, wouldn't they all lean liberal? Wouldn't they all be whichever color is the Democrat one? Blue, I guess maybe it is. And Los Angeles, famously liberal, all the actors and so on and so forth, and Hollywood and blah, blah, blah. New York City, home of Saturday Night Live. The most liberal comedy that there is. Columbus fought to keep the professional soccer team here because Columbus at least thinks that it does say something about a city beyond just, we have a soccer team. They think it also shows progressive, young, international, and cosmopolitan. Before the pandemic, you know what else a lot of Columbus-ites were talking about needing next? Light rail. There are people who say that Columbus in many ways is like Portland East. I don't know. I'm also not saying that's necessarily a bad thing. I'm not saying whether that's good or bad. I'm just stating that perhaps as harsh as Ann Coulter is in her language, and as seemingly ridiculous as the connection is, if we stop and think, perhaps it's not as ridiculous. And if we look at the FIFA World Rankings of soccer, the top countries, mostly Western Europe and some South America, most of them are socialist of a type. Now granted, most of the rest of the Western world is socialist, right? I mean, this collective community thing, if Nietzsche and Ann Coulter are right, is great for the loser, not so great for the winner. A great place for losers could be a place like Canada, where everybody's okay, instead of greats and not greats. Everybody's fine. United States, at least, the fine, okay in the middle is kind of disappearing. The very top, the very bottom. Not a whole lot of chunky middle anymore. It's at least something to think about and consider. For next time, go ahead and read the chapter on moral relativism. And as you're reading it, I want you to keep in mind the nihilism stuff that we've talked about. Actually, I've talked about it. You've hopefully thought about it. And think about points of comparison and contrast with relativism and nihilism, right? Is relativism similar in some ways? Completely different in some ways? So as you're reading, not just to understand relativism, you're also kind of reading with nihilism lurking in the background as well. Okay? And we'll see you next time.